Welcome to the Tuesday edition of Juan's World, and today I'm going to talk about weddings. Not like the weddings that we saw in a previous video, which I'll show you a few images of here. This was in a wedding hall, and it was a wedding that I actually attended because it was the uncle of one of my students, and I was invited, and of course happy to go along. Now, wedding hall weddings are quite common. In fact, there are a number of wedding halls throughout Phnom Penh. I know of at least 7, and there's probably more than that. And they're very expensive, but they also can accommodate large numbers of people. And I have a suspicion that the number of guests is somewhat proportionate to the cost of the wedding. That is, that the groom's family have to put up the money at the outset, but everyone who is invited gets given a red envelope, and that red envelope is meant for a gift to the bride and groom, and that helps to offset the cost of the wedding. And that was also true in China. I went to a wedding in Kunming when I lived there, the wedding of one of my teaching colleagues, and we did exactly the same. Although the Chinese wedding was very different. It was mostly about food. I mean, there was a lot of other things going on, but there was just piles and piles and piles of food. That's not true in Khmer weddings. So let's just look at another kind of wedding, which I alluded to in a previous video. Weddings that take place in marquees or tents on the streets of Phnom Penh, because that's my theme for all of these videos, is the streets of Phnom Penh. Let's get into it. Okay, well, just to start, here's a couple of images for you, both in streets where I used to live, very close to the Royal Palace. And the first thing that you'll notice right off the bat is that the tent takes up almost the whole street. Now, that's not true everywhere, but in the streets where I lived before and where I live now, the street is really narrow. Once you put a tent up in it, you cannot get a car past it. You might be able to get a motorbike by. Usually you can. There's enough room for one motorbike at a time, but no cars or trucks or anything bigger than that. So when a wedding is taking place in a street, they put up signs that basically say, you know, go around, and everyone does. They don't seem to mind it, although it does look like a nuisance to me. And I'm not sure, I'll have to ask about this, I'm not sure whether you need police or city, like Sangkat or PUM or some other kind of administrative permission before you do it, because it does screw up the traffic. And it's going to screw it up for 3 days. The first day they put up the tent, and they, of course, they put up, you'll see, like inside they've got tables and chairs and huge displays of flowers, usually on the outside but also on the inside as well, and they're usually white and yellow flowers. Everything pretty much is white. I showed you an image a while back when I was doing work on business clusters, and I showed you a marquee in a pagoda, which I'll show you here again. And I thought this was a wedding because weddings do happen in pagodas, but this was actually a funeral, and it's marked by the fact that it had black on the entryway. And funerals are more common in pagodas than weddings. The wedding either takes place in a wedding hall or in a tent that is outside the bride's family's house. And sometimes the street's very narrow and it's a real inconvenience. Sometimes it's on a main road. I frequently would ride my bicycle to my Khmer lessons along Russian Federation Boulevard, and there would be a wedding set up which blocked off one whole lane of traffic. and you just have to live with it for 3 days. On the first day they set up the marquee. They set up all the flowers and the tables and chairs and everything else, and then throughout the night there are monks chanting in the tent, or as I discovered when I went to one of the tents outside my apartment, sometimes it's just a recording. I guess it depends on finances or whatever, but there's chanting all night, and then early in the morning the ceremony takes place, and I've shown you how that takes place already, so I'm not going to go back into that again, but I will point out that one of the main features, not quite like a Chinese wedding, but similar, is the food. But instead of it being like one long banquet, here in Cambodia there is a ceremony that lasts all the morning, and then lunch, and then a break, and then dinner. And you can see here the other part that they have to set up. They set up the marquee for where the guests are going to be and where the ceremony is going to happen. And there's a smaller tent to the side which has all of the kitchen equipment in it. And they're cooking vast amounts of food for the people inside. You can see a little bit of it going on here. And then they all depart at whatever time. I mean, yeah, 10 o'clock at night is fairly typical, but could be a little bit later. Depends on how drunk they are, I guess. At the wedding I went to, there was no alcohol at lunch, and then just like cascades of brandy and whiskey and beer in the evening. I don't know. I've not been to a tent wedding, but they end in the evening or early hours in the morning, and then the next day, very early in the morning, the crew come and they dismantle the kitchen. They wash up everything. They dismantle the kitchen and load up all the tables and chairs and dismantle the marquee and take it away. So the ceremony is only one day, but the presence of the tent is really, close to 3 days. So that's 3 days of disruption if you happen to live on a small street as I do. So that's street weddings. I will have more to say about them later, but that's enough for now, and I wish you all have a happy week. Please tell your friends about my videos. Please like, please subscribe, and I'll see you on Friday. Not sure what I'm going to do yet. Still deciding. I haven't been out with my camera yet this week, but have a good week.